Hello and welcome to the MMQB NFL podcast. We're almost there. We're almost right around the corner from the playoffs, from the Super Bowl. Albert Breer's here. I'm Conor. This was as premium a weekend on the NFL calendar as we got, and all year we've been banging the drum about you're ignoring Sunday, you're ignoring Sunday, you're ignoring Sunday. Well, this Sunday we got Bills and Chiefs at 4:25. We got Ravens and Steelers at 1 o'clock, and that game took so long it ended halfway through. Felt like it ended halfway through Bills and Chiefs.
I actually think like that game, when that game ended, there was like 1 minute left in the first quarter of Seahawks Niners. I'm not even kidding. Like I looked up, I'm like, how is Seahawks Niners already at the end of the first quarter?
Well, and we'll get to what happened at the end of the Ravens game, but not to spoil it. But so Baltimore was tying the game, going down there to try to tie the game with a 2-point conversion. And all week, right, NFL programming is built up to this massive Bills-Chiefs matchup. And I said to no one in particular in my house, like, Roger Goodell is about to crash land a UFO in this stadium if Lamar Jackson thinks he's tying this game and then preempting the Taylor Swift Buffalo Chiefs rematch extravaganza. There's no way it's happening. And the game didn't end in any fishy circumstances, but I was like, there's no shot that the NFL allows this to be. But, like I said, for Roger Goodell, it worked out. It always works out, it seems like, I
actually didn't even think about the Taylor Swift angle of it because I was so lost in everything else. But did Jason Kelce make his return to Bills Mafia? I don't think so, right?
I don't think so. I mean,
that was quite a debut in January.
These are all like characters now that have just been thrust into my universe that I have to keep up with, and I don't feel like
Jason Kelce the tailgater rather than Jason Kelce the football player.
I know. I was like, I just got done kind of getting a grasp on what he did well as a football player, and now I got to do all this other stuff. I will say this one thing that I did that brought me great joy on Sunday. I do this podcast, and I also do, obviously some of you guys are crossover fans from Heed the Call. And one thing that I was doing for most of Sunday, I was watching Tom Brady call the Packers and Bears game. And I was just texting the producer of the one show at timestamps during the game when Brady said something that could be like a double entendre. That I could just clip and play for my own amusement at any point in time. So like there was I think there was like a pass interference and he's just like, it's really tight in there. So I had him clip that. And, the Packers had a player named Cox. And so Brady just kept saying Cox. And so I like sometimes you just gotta step back and you gotta have like a little bit of fun with it. It's Tom Brady and he's saying Cox, like what's funnier than that, Just enjoy yourself. But no comment from Albert. That's fine.
I'm a little spacey right now, so I got half of that, and I thought it'd be a bad decision for me to comment on the part that I did get. So I'll just leave it alone.
There we go. All right, so let's.
But now I'm locked in. Now I'm ready to go.
All right,
I have my second sip of my coffee.
Okay, here we go. Bills 30, Chiefs 21. This was the crown jewel of the NFL slate on Sunday. The Bills have a good regular season record against the Chiefs. So those of us who have had to try to make this an indictment on something, we have to remember that they do play well against the Chiefs during the regular season. They tend not to play as well against the Chiefs in the postseason. Sean McDermott was the first guy a couple of years ago to run that stop blitzing Mahomes defense. They went from like a 50% pressure rate on Mahomes to a straight up zero. It was like the only time that Mahomes had not been blitzed in a game in the entirety of his NFL career. Now we roll back to this point where everything's come full circle again, and the Bills were getting after Mahomes, they were pressuring Mahomes, and they were in his face the whole game, and they put together this game plan that was incredibly effective and caused a turnover on the first drive of the game. And we can talk about how things came down and what the end of the game was like, but really from the first two quarters, you could tell the Bills were a better team. They were more energetic. They were more powerful. They were more amped up for this game, and they won it,
Yeah, and I think, like, to some degree, like, this is probably a Chiefs team that's a little worn out by taking everybody's best shot every week. And
yes,
I think, like, whether they'll admit it or not, there is a toll that being undefeated takes on you. like every week. You know what I mean? And so I'm not going to be the guy that's going to say like it's good that they lost a game, because you never want to lose a game. But I think there is probably some weight that comes off their shoulders now to some degree, having suffered their first loss. I thought it was really interesting talking to Terrell Bernard, who's been fantastic for the Bills after the game last night. And, he said that like one of their big things was, and I think this is why they were more aggressive up front. One of their big things was, we need to find a way to keep them out of manageable down and distance situations. And we got to stop having it where Patrick Mahomes is in 3rd and 2 and we're just completely handcuffed. And, I think you could see like with their run defense, and that's a part of this that no one's going to pay attention to, but run defense was a big key for them during the week. You can see with their run defense, the difference between this game and the one that they played last year in January, where the Chiefs ran the ball really effectively in that game in January. This time around, if you take away a 17-yard run that happened in a hurry-up situation in the fourth quarter, Kareem Hunt had 43 yards on 13 carries. They did get the ball to like McCole Hardman and Xavier Worthy on end arounds, but for the most part, the Bills force the Chiefs into key long yardage situations, which, again, like Mahomes can convert those, but making him do it once or twice is different than making him do it 5 or 6 or 7 times, And so I think from that standpoint, you saw a Bills defense that really kind of, I think, held true to that game plan throughout. And I know I beat a dead horse with this, but I'm just so impressed with the way that they've developed players there, and the way that they've kept finding answers. And, it's hard not to look at Terrell Bernard and see how like his opportunity was really created not only by the departure of Tremaine Edmonds, but also Matt Milano's injury issues. He's sort of become the captain of that defense now. And he's become such an important piece, like on the back end. Taylor Rapp was a really, not a star, but a sensible free agent signing to help them, ease the losses of guys like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. At corner, going and getting Rasul Douglas last year, at the deadline, which, I think helped them, reckon with, Tre'Davious White sort of losing his physical faculties a little bit. As the injuries piled up. So you keep looking at a franchise, you see this franchise that's seen a lot of attrition over the last couple of years, and they're able to keep coming up with answers. And I think what's really impressive about it, Conor, is through all that turnover, they're still able to execute, the scheme and the game plans that Sean McDermott and his coaches are putting in front of them. It's really impressive, and I think the Bills' defense deserves a lot of credit for playing the way that they did down the stretch. Yes, they gave up the fourth quarter touchdown, but they were able to close the Chiefs out at the end, and they put the Bills in position to win that game, and they put Josh Allen in position to make a play that I think we'll remember for a long time if the Bills wind up going where they think they're going.
So not only that, right, and Christian Benford is another one, a 2022 sixth round draft pick.
Teron Johnson.
Who was absolutely shut down yesterday, and also, not to, pump the product here, but one of Conor's most underrated players in the AFC preseason. So that was a nice little nod for the product. But the other, another one too, Osiris Torrance last night on the 4th and 2 Josh Allen touchdown run is handling Chris Jones by himself. This is a 2023 second round draft pick. Like, all these guys are coming around, and for all of us that, whether we follow a team and we happen to be fans of a team, let's say, and all of a sudden some of these good players start to go away, right? And they start to disappear. It could be tanking. It could feel like scary, but it could also be clearing space for guys like this to emerge. I mean, my goodness, like, everybody here has stepped up to the plate, and this has been a huge season for McDermott.
I mean, we like even beyond that, sorry to cut you off, Conor, but even beyond like the like all of that, like what was the most publicized loss of the offseason? It was Stephon Diggs, right? Mm-hmm. Khalil Shakir is a baller. Khalil Shakir, the way he sticks his nose in there, the toughness, how smart a game he plays, how clutch he is, how willing they are to go to him in big spots. Dalton Kincaid's a real weapon for him. Dawson Knox, is kind of like a steady presence at tight end. Mac Hollins, they've gotten more out of him than I think anybody would have ever thought they'd be able to get out of a player like that. They bring in Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman didn't play a big role yesterday, but it looks like he's going to be a player. So, even look in the backfield, losing Devin Singletary and having James Cook ready to go, and now Ray Davis looks like a real guy. It's really impressive how they have continued to put guys through the pipeline and have guys ready to go. Even like a Conor McGovern at center when they lose Mitch Morris. It's time and time again. Like, they may not give you the star foundational piece that they lost when they lose them, right? But they're going to have an answer ready to go.
I just texted you, by the way. You mentioned Mac Hollins on the Josh Allen 26-yard touchdown run. He's like, Josh Allen has barely broken the line of scrimmage. Like, he is. I screenshotted the play, so you can go back and look at it. I also posted it on.
I like how he's like right by the score bug there too.
Yeah, I posted it on Twitter and Blue Sky, which, by the way, follow us on Blue Sky. We're on Blue Sky. Life is good over there. If you're into that kind of thing, we're also on Twitter too. Doesn't matter, or X, whatever. But Josh Allen just breaks the plane on 4th and 2, and Mac Hollins is not blocking. He's just signaling. He's just signaling first down. But he's just
he knows Josh has got the rest.
Yeah, he knows Josh has got the rest. Quick, like a fun little note on that play call. So I loved it all really came down to a 4th and 2, right? On the 26-yard line. And so there's the micro and the macro. There's the big and the small. The big thing here is that Sean McDermott, who was kind of at the beginning of his career, really through the middle of his career, more conservative as a head coach, decides to go for it, just stomp on the Chiefs' neck and take the ball away from Patrick Mahomes altogether. I thought that was a huge call for him. It was also a huge call for Joe Brady. So the call here is called mesh follow, or it's called mesh traffic, depending on what you want to use. Don't want to trigger Albert here, but Jim Harbaugh's Michigan team used this to score a lot of touchdowns.
Oh, no, I'm good with Jim now.
Yeah, okay, all right, you're good with Jim. All right, so the amazing thing about that play, and I want to urge you guys to go back and look at it again, is watch how they condensed everything and they put a body in every single place where a Chiefs defender would have to mark them. So what you're doing is you're taking one of the best tackle in space defenses in the entire NFL, and you're tying up every single one of them. Leo Chenal, like all these guys are, Reed, like everybody's has to have a body. And then it opens up a gap, which I had a coach text me this, so like, wait until the all-22 comes out. The B gap that Josh Allen went through is going to be the size of a semi-truck. And so I'm very eager to see that on all-22 today. But amazing play call by Joe Brady, who I think is quietly sort of making his way up the head coaching ladder here and could factor into some interviews in a couple of months. But just a lights out call by him, lights out call by McDermott, and an MVP performance from Allen. And like, let's go. Like, let's get the Bills in the Super Bowl. I'm ready, dude. Like, I'm ready for, I'm ready.
And that was like, let's call that what it was too. I mean, I said this on Twitter last night. That was a superhero play.
Yeah.
Like, that was like a put your foot in the ground, go, and like the speed and violence with which he was running. Like, that picture you just texted me, look at Nick Bolton, right? Like, that's like a Pro Bowl level linebacker who has a running start at him. Now, if you watch that play, watch the way he just bounces off Josh Allen. It's like insane. Like, he has a running start on him. I believe, and I have to go back and look at it, but I believe he like connects on him at his hip. And the way he just kind of like, oh yeah, no big deal. 235-pound linebacker coming at me at full speed. Like, see you later. And then just carries Brian Cook, their safety, into the end zone. I go back to that Jordan Palmer line again, where Jordan Palmer said, I think this is the most talented quarterback of all time. And I thought, sorry, Jordan, that it was normal quarterback coach hyperbole. I guess not. I don't think that, and Mahomes is great. Like, Mahomes is the guy for this era. I don't know that there's ever physically been anybody like Josh Allen.
No, and that's the other thing too, right? Is a lot of the play call. By the time those guys realized that Josh Allen had broken the pocket, trying to tackle him at that point is like going to the final stretch at Churchill Downs and trying to step in front of a racehorse. Like, it's not going to happen. And so I thought that was just huge. It was a huge victory for Buffalo, and also I think an important one for what happens with the Chiefs from here on out, because now you know what you can get away with, and now you know what you can't get away with. And you have to protect Patrick Mahomes better. You have to rush the passer better. Like, these are lingering issues. And Mahomes, let's be honest, was a little late on some throws, right? He missed Xavier Worthy in this game, and has been missing Xavier Worthy on some of these kill shot plays. Like, everything's got to tighten up there,
Yeah, and I think like it's sort of a result of the Chiefs having to change their identity on the fly on offense, which makes it a little difficult. And I think Matt Nagy's done a really nice job of getting them there, but I think this shows they still have a ways to go. If you go back to training camp, the identity was going to be, and we've talked about this, Conor, Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown running downfield, and Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce running underneath in all the space that they'd be able to vacate, And so Rashee Rice is gone for the year. Hollywood Brown is likely gone for the year. He may come back in the playoffs, but you lose half of that equation, and you've got to reconfigure who you are offensively. You bring Juju Smith-Schuster back. Yes, he's been there before, but he's jumping on a moving train. Same goes for DeAndre Hopkins. Now you're figuring out like how to use those guys in multiple spots, because both those guys at their age and with their physical status right now are probably best played inside. So that was part of the equation for their front office when they went to the coaching staff and said, can you use Juju and Hopkins at the same time? That question was asked because these guys are probably right now at this stage at their best, both as inside receivers. So they're still figuring out like using both of those guys on the field at the same time. So there are just all of these moving parts with where the Chiefs are. And I don't think the Chiefs are who they're going to be in a month. Like, I think they'll get better offensively. Now, that said, Buffalo should be better too, right?
For sure. I mean Matt Milano's coming back.
Matt Milano's coming back. And how many guys do they have now that are in year 2, year 3, year 4? Again, your Kincaids, your Shakirs, like, Christian Benford, like you said, like you've got all of these guys who are ascending players. So the Bills sort of are where they were like 4 or 5 years ago, right? In so many ways, where they've got a bunch of guys who haven't arrived yet, who are ascending on their roster. Not to mention like the young defensive linemen coming of age. Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, obviously Ed Oliver's an established player, but like I just talking about this makes me think about how cool this could be, whether it's in Orchard Park or Kansas City in January.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm very, very high on this group. Please give us another rematch, right? That's all I want, is another playoff rematch. I mean, I'm ready. I'm ready for the Bills to, wouldn't that be fun? Like, Bills in the Super Bowl and like
Buffalo, Detroit Super Bowl.
Oh, can you imagine?
Did you see my Alvin Mack clip yesterday? I've holstered that one for a while.
No.
Okay, so if anybody hasn't seen the program, I will send you. You can DM me. I will send you I'll do what Darlington does with Animal House. I will send you a DVD copy of the program because it is the greatest sports movie of all time. I will.
Does Jeff Darlington send people copies of?
So Jeff's whole thing is, I don't know if I don't know if you've seen him do this before on Twitter, but like in a close game, he will tweet out, was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
Yes.
And then he gets the responses and everything else. And so he played this game for a while. And then, like he turned it into like, all right, like if you mess this up, DM me and I'll send you a copy of Animal House. So it was like kind of like this fun little game he played. Well, just like Jeff is a champion for Animal House, and I am too. I'm a champion for the program. Again, the greatest sports movie of all time. And there's a scene from the program where Alvin Mack, the All-American linebacker for ESU, is sitting with his tutor, and his tutor asks, "Okay, Alvin, who fought in the Punic Wars?" And he answers, "I don't know, Detroit and Buffalo." So I am hoping that Super Bowl 59 is the much anticipated rematch of the Punic Wars.
Oh,
and if you
man.
and if you need a copy of the program, I'll see if we can get you one.
Wow. Look at that. See?
I just
come
think
on here.
that movie is massively underrated. I've got a list of underrated movies too. Like Outside Providence would be on that too. But yeah, like the program is not appreciated. You always hear people talk about Field of Dreams or
Field
or
of
Hoosiers
Dreams
or whatever as these classic sports movies. Well, I mean, the program was so ahead of its time. Like you watch it now, it's like it was seen as like outrageous back then. You know, I was in the 8th grade, went and saw it with my 8th grade Pop Warner team before the scene got taken out where the kids lie in the middle of the yellow line. Like if you go back and watch it now, what was seen as outrageous back then is like now sort of almost like a documentary, you know?
Albert and the program. DM him. Make him send you a copy of the program. Let's see what happens. What is Underdog? Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and 2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Just call your shot by picking higher or lower on 2 or more players' stats. Underdog is for everyone, so you can make a play with only $1 or go big and win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. Underdog is the best place to cash in on all your takes this football season. Which players are going to go off? Which players are going ice cold? Make your picks in just a few taps and turn your sports opinions into real money. Try End Zone Rush. This is a game you won't find anywhere else. You just pick whether or not a player will score a touchdown by swiping right for yes or left for no. It's as simple as that. Plus, your entry will be automatically boosted and you'll get a 51% profit boost when you play. Join over 5 million fans that are already playing on Underdog with their pick'em games. You could win some money by making entries with your favorite players. Underdog is the best place to play pick'em, so sign up now and deposit using promo code Sports Illustrated to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. I am not a gambler. I got some friends out there who they always come to me and they say, "Conor, how do I do this? How do I bet this? What is a spread? What does all this stuff mean?" You know, this is what's interesting about Underdog. You don't have to know all that stuff. You don't have to be an old-fashioned mafioso style bookie. You just have to know higher, lower, yes, no, score, no score. They're making it a little bit easier for you to get into the game. Download the app today and use the code Sports Illustrated to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's Sports Illustrated for $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown, just select higher or lower on Underdog. Must be 18 years of age or older, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska and Colorado for some games, 21 and older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8 Hope NY or text Hope NY at 467-369. Another one that comes down to critical calls, and I think you and I were kind of on the same page here, which, by the way, Reed Albert's takeaways got all the best insights from all the players from Sunday. So Steelers 18, Ravens 16. So I finally, the full game broadcast just came out before we started taping, and that's one thing that's hard about doing these games on Sunday is we don't have access to it unless you're recording the game, and then, you know, the the full game replays don't come up in time. Like, so I'm writing right as these games are ending.
Yep.
But the one thing that I caught at the end of this game, so it's 18-16, Pittsburgh over Baltimore. There's 1:06 to go in the fourth quarter. Baltimore is about to go in and try and score a 2-point conversion to tie this game up. And so what I want to talk about in this game is how freaking good Mike Tomlin is, right? So Pittsburgh has 3 timeouts. If you're John Harbaugh, you're probably guessing that Mike Tomlin is going to sit on these timeouts in case they have to use them to drive back down the field and to score a game-winning field goal, right? So what he does is, this is great. I'm rewatching it.
Game book, huh?
Great podcasting here by everybody. But so he calls a timeout just as Baltimore is snapping the ball on their 2-point conversion.
Yep.
It's clear that they're running a jump pass to Lamar Jackson's right side, which is the side that Lamar is much more comfortable rolling towards, right? And so, you get them to reveal their A call. And what a lot of people don't understand is on an offensive coordinator's play sheet, you have those calls. Like, gotta have it is what some of these guys call it, right? That's their gotta have it play, right? And so now they've burned that. That's out the window. We know what it was. You can't run it again. And so after the timeout, Baltimore comes back, and you're going to have to go to the other side. Lamar's not as good rolling to his left. And you can watch before the play, Isaiah Likely and Nelson Aguilar kind of slapping each other. Like, no, you're supposed to be here. You're supposed to be here. And they're shuffling back and forth. That play was dead on arrival. It was dead before it started. One of the two of them blew a blocking assignment. The guards who are pulling to try to lead Lamar Jackson on the rollout get stuck in the fray there. And that's all because of one timeout. And Mike Tomlin was awesome there. And I thought that was amazing.
And honestly, this is the part of being a head coach that I think a lot of people don't put enough stock in. The overall game management part, right? The feel for what the other team is doing and thinking and how you can get in the other team's head and mess with them. And, it's something that Belichick was obviously the best at for a lot of years. Of course, the famous story of him looking across the field in Super Bowl 49 at the Seahawks sideline and saying he didn't think it was quite right, which, leads into the interception. Mike Vrabel was excellent at it. I think Dan Campbell's great at it,
Yes.
And it's sort of interesting in that, I think in a lot of these cases, it's a result of the head coach not having to call plays.
Mm-hmm.
And I know everybody wants the next great play caller. And the reality of it is, I think it's rare that you find a guy who can do both. And so the guys who are really good with the game management stuff, I think can weaponize their team in a completely different way. And I think something like that, you're right. You get into that situation. Okay. So either you got a good look at something they're going to run again, or you took it off the table for them. One way or the other, you just won that situation. And so it's just Mike Tomlin having a really good sense for the moment and what he needed to do in the moment to give his team the best shot. And it was interesting too, on the play call after that, how the Steelers were so ready for what was coming. And it's just, and I'm going to pull up, and this is more great podcasting, but I'll pull up what Cam Hayward said to me after the game about it, because I thought, so much of it is just having a veteran defense that they had a veteran they have a veteran defense who can do multiple things. So on the first play call, they were in a nickel. They called the timeout. They came back and went to an Okie front, which is their base front. And so by doing that, they made the Ravens adjust. And looking at the formation, they could see how it was condensed to the left and that they were going to roll out towards the left. And you see how fast all their players reacted to it. Just all the way around, the I think you see like the Steelers just in these moments are really, really good. And it goes back to last week too with DeMonte Casey and of course Minka Fitzpatrick stopping Zach Ertz, inches short of the line to gain. It's like it's a team that knows what it needs to do to win every game. And I know that sounds simple, but it's like beyond just like, oh yeah, we have to run the ball well and our quarterback has to have a quarterback rating of over 100 and our defense has to stop the run and win on third down. No, it's like, it's these little situations. It's knowing what's coming. It's knowing what, where you have to stop the guy, in the case of Ertz, it's being able to read what the team is doing. And like you said, take their A option off the table. It's just a Steelers team that has a lot of things working right now. And I don't think it's a mistake that, you look at the guys who are playing pivotal roles for them, and so many of them are veterans,
Yeah.
Especially on defense with TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and Minka Fitzpatrick. It's just a lot of guys that really know what they're doing.
I love too at the end of the game, on the Steelers' last drive, just messing with Baltimore, putting Justin Fields in, taking him out, putting him in, taking him out, just because you can, And it's just this little and listen,
Justin still shouldn't have slid. Like that was the one thing with Fields. Like he shouldn't have. That was the one mistake at the end of the game. I'm sure he was killing himself for it, but he mistimed his slide there at the very end.
He did. One more note on Tom, which I thought should not go overlooked, is the fact that a little bit of a spicy move making Patrick Queen, pregame captain, former Raven, and because Tomlin's not Tomlin is a buttoned up guy. Like he's very classy, I feel like. And, but the pregame coin toss middle finger is a rarely utilized weapon in a coach's arsenal. Like, remember when Jeff Fisher?
I was going to say, that's the one. That was the one right there.
All those players ended up kind of sucking, but when they traded the RG3 trade at the time with the Washington franchise, and Jeff Fisher was then the head coach of the Rams, and the Rams obviously traded with the Washington franchise for that pick, and Jeff Fisher made all the players that they got from that draft the pregame captains.
That's the best one, right?
But then again, not necessarily a flex, right?
But I mean, in the moment, it was awesome. Now it didn't work out in the long run, but it was still like just to think of that was fantastic,
Who do you remember who was in? Oh, here we go. Jeff Fish. I actually wrote about this.
Who was in that trade? It was Greg Robinson.
Guess who wrote that?
Was Alec Ogletree in that trade? Conor Orr.
I wrote that story for NFL.com.
So
wow, they beat Washington.
Let me see how many I can name. Greg Robinson.
Yep.
Alec Ogletree.
Yes. There's a couple decent players here.
Oh, Janoris Jenkins.
Yep. If you get the last three, I'm going to be pretty impressed.
I think there was an interior lineman, like a guard or something in there.
Mm-mm.
No.
We got D tackle.
Oh, Zach Stacy.
Yes, 4.
I remember him for really
shit.
not great reasons. Hold on, Zach Stacy,
wide receiver and a defensive tackle left.
Okay, I don't think I'll get those.
Stedman Bailey.
Bailey, yeah.
And Michael Brockers.
Michael Brockers is, yeah. I knew there was a third first-round pick, but I couldn't remember who, so Brockers makes sense. Brockers played a long time in the league. Brockers is probably Jenkins is probably the best player of those guys, but Brockers definitely had the longest career, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he made it to the Dan Campbell Lions.
Wow, that's true.
Yeah. Remember Brad Holmes brought him over.
RG3 actually played in that game. I'm reading my recap from around the NFL of this. What an electric
Cousins started though, right?
Cousins did. It was they just pulled him at the end because the Rams were destroying them. That's all.
What year was that? What year was that?
December of 2014. Actually, almost a year to the. So what did that?
So it was Jay Gruden's first year.
Yeah. All right. Nice little callback there, Mike. Well done, by the way, Albert. I mean, that was impressive.
What did I get, 4?
Yeah.
I mean, 4, not bad.
I think I would have gotten Greg Robinson. That's about it. All right, let's move on to Sunday Night Football. Chargers 34, Bengals 27.
That was like one last thing on that. Like, the funny thing is, I remember when Greg Robinson was drafted, we were all like, oh my God, they got their left tackle of the future with this trade. Yeah, not so much.
No, left tackle is not the lock draft that many fans believe it to be. This is a game, Chargers-Bengals, that made me text a group of my friends that if this went to overtime, I was going to open my front door and slam my head in it. It was exciting. However, it was one of those weird games that it seemed like nobody exactly wanted to win. And my favorite part of the game is, so there's this part, and I think that fans now, we can start to get smart about it and to notice it, but Albert, you and I are a little bit more cynical. There's always this part in a game when an owner hosts a primetime game. I call it the whipped topping segment, where the broadcast crew just starts glowing about the owner and how much money he spends.
Oh, look at him up there.
Oh, there's John Spanos.
There's his lovely wife.
And we got to tour the facility, and let me tell you,
there's always a plug. There's always a plug.
Oh wow! And the building, and how beautiful the building is. And I thought it was funny that just as they were
sometimes they debunk something like some of these people are talking about their spending. They've been investing plenty of money in the team.
Yeah, that was, the reason that Spanos had to spend all that money was because he had like the cheapest head coach in the NFL for the previous 20 seasons before he went out and got Jim Harbaugh and built a facility and stopped making the team sit on the airplane runway while they were loading the luggage.
By the way, as we get started with the actual game itself, how stupid do a lot of NFL teams look for not pursuing Jim Harbaugh the last few years? It could have saved me a lot of heartache, but I look at this and all the skepticism over Harbaugh the last few years, it's just looks so incredibly dumb now.
It does. Just quickly though, to put a bow on my whip topping segment,
I do want to finish this one out because this is something that I'm very in tune to. Me and my buddy Michael Hawley have a text group where we text about the crafts and how when they go to the crafts in the box, maybe Bon Jovi's up there, and inevitably they'll start talking about Patriot Place, which is the mall that they built around the Mike, I just had a great meal at Davio's last night. I can't tell you. And it's right here by the stadium. Can you believe it?
And you can use this coupon for 13% off your next. But right when they were doing the whip topping segment on the Spanos family, they're like, facilities are great. End segment. Herbert just gets blasted and fumbles the ball, and the Bengals get it back. And I was like, yes, because, stop it. Stop doing this silly thing that we all
because no fan cares about the owner.
They don't care, and they're not dumb. We know when this is native advertising. It's like a little baked in commercial, you know. And great announcers.
Well, that was why it was great when Arthur Blank night backfired a few weeks ago. And
I Arthur Blank's one of the good owners. I think
he's
sports,
fine. But it was all right. Eventually somebody's gonna call you out on this, and it's just because it doesn't happen in other sports, does it?
No.
You got Mark Cuban, but that's only because he's a lunatic that's on the wood there at an NBA game. It doesn't happen in other sports.
I agree. I think, and it's just so funny, this country club mentality. But anyway,
what's in the same category as the clowns in our business that refer to these guys as Mr. This or Mr. That? It's like why are you referring to him the same way you would refer to your buddy in 6th grade's dad because he fracked some oil?
Do you call coach guy?
No.
Never.
I call my coaches coach. My high school coaches. I still call them coach.
I am I have a surprisingly flexible take on this.
Yeah.
So for those of you who listening and don't care, like some reporters call the head coach Coach Tomlin or Coach whatever, and some people call them by their first name. I have been on both sides of the coin. I called a GM by his first name once when I was a very young reporter and got like a horrified look from a PR person, which was kind of interesting.
What do you like? But the GM?
The GM. And like, what are you supposed to call him?
What do you want you to call him? Mr. something?
Like, I don't know, like Mr. Manager, whatever. I don't know.
Executive
Like,
Smith?
Yeah. But so I've been on both sides of the coin. I'm a feel it out guy.
Yeah.
So if I feel like it really means a lot to you, and it's like your friend who got a doctorate in psychology and wants to be called Dr. Brown. Okay, you could be Dr.
I can
Brown,
understand that.
Brown,
Like to me, it's like as long as it's about the other person, I'm fine with it, right? Like, I mean, I don't need to prove that I played football at a low level for 9 years by calling someone coach. Now, like, I'm with you. Like, if it's very important to that person, I could definitely see you doing that. But I think too often that's not what it is. I think that's like someone trying to prove that they're like in the club, that they're like a football guy,
Correct. Yes. But anyway, so if you saw Jim Harbaugh, you're just like, what's up, Jim?
I would say, yeah, I'd say Jim. Now, if you requested or somebody requested that I change that, maybe I consider it. But yeah, I don't call any of them. I don't, and I know I honestly, to like the guy's credit too. Now I've heard the way that it works in college football in the South. I can't think of once.
Did Alabama reporters call Nick Saban Coach Saban, or they call him Nick? Did Alabama reporters call him
Coach
Nick
Saban?
All the reporters called him Coach Saban?
I think so, yeah. I think so. I don't know. I can check with some people and verify that, and we can maybe follow back up on that next week. But I never like in 20, this is my 20th season covering the NFL. I have never failed to call someone coach and had that coach basically tell me to call him. This never happened. Never happened in the NFL. So I don't think, like, to be fair to all of these guys, I don't think it's an NFL thing,
I don't want to belabor this point any longer, but I have like one.
No, I have had an owner. I have had somebody say something to me about calling when I was at NFL Network, had somebody say something to me about calling owners by their first names, which, I mean, was one of the biggest eye roll moments of my entire career, where somebody said to me that, and this person will remain nameless, that not only does it honor the person that the owner that you're calling Mr., but it also makes it seem like your job is more important when you call them Mr., which I thought was the biggest load of horse what I've ever heard.
What happened? Did you call Woody Johnson Big Wood? Is that why you got in trouble? What's up, Big Wood?
Have you ever referred to Woody as Mr. Johnson?
No. No, I have not. But so again, our producer Shelby's going to kill us. He's like,
he's tearing his hair. He's pulling the hair out of his head right now.
Absolutely. So one quick story, and then I swear to God, we're going to talk about the Bengals and the Chargers. But when there was this kind of
40 minutes in on our second game,
I know there was this inflection point in the NFL where it was like, when I was covering the Giants and Janoris Jenkins was there, and they were like, listen, like, he wants to go by Jackrabbit, and I was like, that's cool, but like. I'm not calling a grown man Jackrabbit. I'm just not going to do it.
It's not like when Adafe Owe asked to be called Adafe, or when like Justin Matabuke now wants to go by Namdi. Like,
great.
That's way different than like. Now I'm Jackrabbit.
Yeah, it's like
Jackrabbit. That would be in the same category as Ocho Cinco, right?
Yeah, like, it's a fun thing for you, and maybe there's some personal, there's something personally meaningful behind it, and I totally respect that. But
there is in his case, but still, like in his case, he's from the Muck in Florida, where, that area, that the Pahokee area where they chase rabbits. So there is something really meaningful for him, but still, I mean, it's not like that's like a formal name.
No. And so I just couldn't, there's some things that just don't register, right? I can't look at someone in the eye and be like, Mr. Jackrabbit, sir. I can't do it. Anyway, 34, let's reset here. 34-27 Chargers over the Bengals. To me, this was a big body language game. At the end of this game, you could tell that the Bengals had just sort of, like, after Evan McPherson misses the kicks, you see Jamar Chase on the sideline, and he went off after the game about ask Zach why we're not in good position. Zach Taylor, the head coach, ask Zach why we're losing these games. Ask Zach how it's going with all this stuff. Meanwhile, the Chargers, a team with less superior skill position talent, just gets a gutsy end of game performance out of Justin Herbert, out of Ladd McConkey, who had a big drop before, and I don't know if that was a drop really or an overthrow by Herbert, whatever you want to call it, but there was some miscommunications there. But 6 catches on 9 targets, 123 yards, and the big catches, right? 20 yards a catch he's averaging here during this one, and it's not like one of them was a big outlier that pumped the average up. He was massive in this game, and all of a sudden Jim Harbaugh's got this team at 7-3. They're in the second to last wild card spot, and holy smokes, like, if you're the 2 seed, do you want to play these guys in the first round of the playoffs? Hell no.
And I think it's like the way they responded was so impressive. To blow that lead, what was it, 24-6 at one point, and it winds up 27-27. In 3 plays to go down the field the way that they did. And we'll get to the Bengals because their defense is 100% complicit here too. But to just rip down the field with 2 big throws to Ladd McConkey and then J.K. Dobbins like going right down Main Street into the end zone was, I think, just a statement on where the Chargers are, on the mentality of that team. Like, remember, this is like remember like the whole chargering thing? Like, this is a franchise where it's like embedded that something bad is going to happen, right? And that team blows that lead at home on Sunday night. This is supposed to be like their coming out party, right? Like where the rest of the country is going to get to see what Jim Harbaugh has built in Los Angeles. And they blow that lead, and they're able to compartmentalize what happened and put their foot in the ground and go. And like just, again, tear down the field that way is just insane. I think it said a lot for their mental toughness. It was great. Like one of my favorite things now is to watch the post-game locker room of the Chargers. Did you watch it yet?
No.
So more group high fives. Jim Harbaugh, I think said before, this is going to be the greatest high five of all time. And then they all give each other high fives. And then they sung for He's a Jolly Good Fellow, which Harbaugh has done before. And then he hit him with Who's Got It Better Than Us. So it was like a perfect Harbaugh post-game locker room for, I think, what is a defining win for them, right? Like, again, like this is the franchise where you expect bad things to happen at the end, and bad things were happening.
Yeah.
And like, just, I think this feels like a pivot point for them, and maybe it's kind of shallow on my part to say that just because this one was on national television and a standalone game and all of that. But I love where they're going. And you know what? Like so much of it too, Connor, they're getting more out of Justin Herbert because they're asking less of him. Like they're not asking him to carry the team. They've got the number 1 defense in the league. They've got a physical, tough run game. Like, you see what happens when you don't ask your quarterback to be Superman on every play?
Yeah. It's amazing. It really is. The Bengals, on the other hand, I mean, I'm still not ready to
Neither am I, but
kiss this team goodbye. But yeah, right. I mean, I think we're getting to the point where we're going to have to think about it at some point, I mean,
yeah, I think that there's a lot of questions internally about where they are. And I'd be worried about where the defense is in particular. And
played an all right game on Sunday, the defense, but this was,
but when they needed it, they couldn't get it. And
yes.
And that was a defense that was one of the best in the league a couple of years ago. I think Lou Anarumo, who's one of the best defensive coordinators in football, is operating with his hands tied behind his back right now.
Personnel-wise, yes.
They bring back Von Belt, who's, I think, now on his last legs, was a really good player for them a couple of years ago. They're in that position to have to bring him back because the communication collapsed last year because they let Bell and Jesse Bates go at once. Jesse Bates, who I think, you look back at it and the player he is now in Atlanta, Jesse Bates a really good player, and he was homegrown, and you should have kept him. You lose him. At corner, it's not the same. You just haven't done the job drafting and developing that you had done years ago. Cam Taylor-Britt is inconsistent. Dax Hill is hurt. DJ Turner is probably a backup who is being forced to start right now. And then, up front, Trey Hendrickson has to be everything for them because they don't have DJ Reader anymore because Sam Hubbard's gotten old,
Right.
So it's like all of these things that happening at once. And I think it's like you contrast it against like what Buffalo did, where Buffalo let like some older guys go. And yes, it was painful to say goodbye to guys like Micah Hyde, but it had to be done. And now you see like where they really invested in getting it right with young guys, and that's paying off. It almost feels like the opposite's happening in Cincinnati on defense.
So I think you're right, Albert. And to me, the other thing too is every team goes through this emotional reckoning. I mean, we've seen reports of players-only meetings with the Jets and Devontae Adams talking, and the Texans, and all these places, the Raiders. I think Cincinnati, it's just coming to a head at this point, and Jamar Chase has probably certainly got some feelings, wasn't paid going into the season, probably a little bit frustrated. Maybe the players are frustrated, even though this Mike Brown regime has spent for Zach Taylor. I mean, they've been towards the top of free agency spend since Zach Taylor has been there. But, at some point, right, you got to air it out. This is a veteran team. There's a lot of important guys on this team, and maybe you air it out and maybe it fixes something. But, man, I don't know. I mean, they're just, know.
I just think like they're, with the loss of Joe Mixon, with the changes on the offensive line, with the defense getting older, I think what you're seeing is like just an enormous amount of pressure on guys like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase to carry the team now. Right. And like this was one of the more talented rosters in the NFL 2 or 3 years ago. And like it's sort of indicative of how fast things can change, And 2 or 3 years ago, they had the cap space, the financial wherewithal to build aggressively around those guys. And now, with Burrow's new contract, with what's coming with Chase, like they're going to have to walk a narrower path to get there. And I also think part of this could have been avoided if you take care of Chase before the season, which it still makes no sense to me why that hasn't been done.
I agree. All right, let's span the rest of the NFL globe here. Packers 20, Bears 19. God bless Matt Eberflus, man. I feel so bad for this guy at this point. Yeah. And, he's getting picked apart right now in Chicago. And he's one of those guys that I honestly feel like, yes, he's made some bad decisions. Was the Hail Mary thing on his shoulders? For sure. I mean, you call a timeout there, you get Tyreek Stevenson's head screwed on straight, and you knock that ball down. Let's go. Yeah. You don't think that Jaden Daniels is going to sprint 60 yards for a touchdown in 3 seconds. You play defense a little bit of a different way. This guy's doing everything. And in Green Bay, like this game, and we'll get to Caleb Williams in a second, but like right before the half, he is like milking microseconds off the clock to ensure that Green Bay cannot get the ball back. He got the ball inside the red zone and they're running like 2 or 3 seconds off the clock. Like he is so hyper concerned about all of this stuff, and he was getting it right. He was calling a defense really well. They stopped the Packers on downs in the red zone. They picked off Jordan Love in the red zone. And then the Thomas Brown flip worked. I mean, Caleb Williams looked better than he's looked all season against a quality opponent. Let's put that caveat in there because he looked good against the Panthers. Everybody looks good against the Panthers. But he looked as good as he's looked against a quality opponent all year. He was getting rid of the football. He felt confident moving on the ground and using his legs. Like this was a different player than we've seen, but you get the kick blocked at the end of the game, and it's just like, God bless this guy. Like nothing, it's, sometimes you just feel like this isn't my time and this isn't my place. Like it's just the stacking up of bad luck and unfortunate circumstances is just too much.
Yeah, and I think he's done like a really good job getting them back up to level ground, for sure. And, I think, maybe like you get a little spark from playing from going to a new coordinator. And, and I think like they played well enough defensively without question. Like they have a really good defense. I just don't think it's going to, I don't think you're going to be able to sustain a really high level of play with what they've got offensively right now and where they're at. Like Keenan Allen has gotten old, and he's not what he was. And there's a reason he was available for a 4th-round pick. DJ Moore is a really nice weapon, but that's what he is, a weapon. Like he's not like a receiver that's going to beat man coverage. Rome Odunze is a rookie. The offensive line hasn't been great. It's just, and I don't know that the scheme is the best fit for Caleb Williams at this stage of his career either. So I appreciate what Thomas Brown was able to do for him, and he did give them a different voice, and he did some little things during the week, like having them meet as a group rather than in position groups to try to get them unified and pointed in the right direction. Losing this way takes the air out of that balloon a little, I think, and for it to happen in the manner that it did, the Packers players, one of them said to me flat out, like, we saw a weakness in their field goal team, and we saw where we were going to be able to press the middle of their line and probably get through, and almost got through earlier in the game. It's just a tough look, for everybody there. And, now I think you can say they're firmly out of the NFC North race with the Lions at 9-1, the Vikings at 8-2, and the Packers at 7-3.
Ugh. You feel bad for Matt Eberflus, but I'll say this, there's only 32 of these jobs, and let's just play the game, right? That the Bears make a decision here. Who is signing up to play against Dan Campbell twice a year, Kevin O'Connell twice a year, and Matt LaFleur twice a year? Like, holy smokes. That division is going to be... I heard a lot of people say, that's a perfect job for Ben Johnson with the Lions. You think Ben Johnson's going in the division? Yeah. You think Ben Johnson's going against Dan Campbell twice a year?
I had actually heard that last year that was the job that he wanted.
I did too.
And so... But now, like, you look at it like, all right, now we've seen Kevin O'Connell post Kirk Cousins. It looks like it might be even better, And now we've seen, we've seen the Packers with a new defensive coordinator and Jeff Hafley, and then obviously the Lions are the Lions. It's going to be a tough, for a guy with options. It's a tough job to look at and say, yeah, that's where I want to go. On the flip side, I still believe in Caleb Williams. Like, I still think Caleb Williams has all the tools. I think the problem is he's a little further away than we thought he was going to be, just from a developmental standpoint, right? Which is fair because he was a 3-year college player. And, Jaden Daniels, who was a 5-year college player, has sort of put the spotlight on that, And even Drake May. Where the bar is really low for Drake May in New England, and he's clearing it by a mile. Caleb Williams was expected to be leading a playoff team, and that's not happening. And I think maybe the problem wasn't Caleb Williams himself. The problem was the rest of us for having that expectation on him based on where he was developmentally, and also based on maybe where that roster is now that we have a more realistic look at it.
On the Packers side, I'll just say this, I think that this team has got to get better in the red zone. The Packers are one of the worst red zone teams in the NFL, and that Josh Jacobs is a godsend for this team. And I know that people were upset about them getting rid of Aaron Jones, but they wanted a different style of player. And yes, Christian Watson had the big statistical day, but Josh Jacobs won them this game. He won them this game on the ground. He won them this game with receiving. They've barely tapped his potential as a receiver, which I think is significant. And so just stuff to look at going down the road here. The Packers are okay, but is there a divide between them and the Lions? No question. And it gets bigger and bigger by the week. Speaking of which, Albert, the Lions beat the Jaguars 52-6 on Sunday. And here's all I'm going to say about that.
This legitimately looked like an SEC team taking on like a directional school.
Yeah. Here's all I'm going to say about that. I've seen complaints about the Lions running up the score. I've seen complaints about Dan Campbell leaving his starters in, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous, and here's why. if you're an NFL team, you are trying to preach to these guys to keep your head in the moment, keep your head in this week, keep your head in what you're doing. That's how Dan Campbell turned this team around in the first place, right? The Lions were a wreck. There was all this narratives about how terrible of a franchise it was. Guys didn't want to come to work. I mean, I know I interviewed these players, right? And what Dan Campbell did was instill this attitude of like, focus on what's in front of you, just one game at a time. And I know it sounds cliche, but he really dialed this in. So if you're supposed to focus on the Jaguars and the Jaguars decide to lay down and not prepare, too bad. You got 8 excellent play calls left in the gauntlet, and they're only going to work against this defense. Freaking call them. Who cares? Like, the Jaguars have to stand up for them. Like, you're an NFL team. You're one of 32 NFL teams. You should be ready enough to stop this, right? It's I don't care. There's no such thing as embarrassing another team in the NFL. The Lions demolished them, and the Jaguars deserved it. I'm sorry. Like, they prepared better, and you run all the plays that you call, because everyone's like, well, you could save those calls for another time. Not necessarily, because you don't play a team with the same personnel, the same scheme, anything like that. So I'm totally fine with them emptying the gauntlet on them. Go ahead.
The numbers are like freaking insane too. Like 645 yards to 170, which hat tip to Michael David Smith at Pro Football Talk. I think he said that was the biggest margin in yardage since 1979, which is before I was born, and believe it or not, and was the last year I believe Terry Bradshaw and Chuck Noll won a Super Bowl. First downs 38-10. The Lions were 60% on third down, but what's interesting about that to me, they only had 10 third downs. Think about that. They had 38 first downs, and they only had 10 third downs.
Yeah.
And what does that tell you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it was, I think, 2-1 in time of possession. It's just the Lions playing their game. I think the Jaguars are the story coming out of this one.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. Everyone's saying, let's get rid of Doug Peterson. Let's fire Doug Peterson. Okay. What does that solve right now? Right. And my only criticism of Doug Peterson is I think that what he did at the podium last week when he was asked about an interception, he said, "I'm just not going to tell you guys because you're not going to understand." Like, that to me is a level of flippantness, whatever you want to call it, that is beneath the position. And I think if you're not going to go out there and at least put a brave face on, you deserve to get hooked because you're just being a bad ambassador for the brand. That Jaguars media crew, they're a bunch of good guys. That's not like, it's not like one of these markets where everyone's out to carve you up. Like, this is genuinely good people.
And this is a head coach who was in Philly before this, which is that market.
Right. So it's like, go out there and have a little bit of respect for the position and respect for the brand. You want to hook him because he's doing that? Fine. Hook him because he's doing that. But do you think that pairing Trevor Lawrence with Mike McCoy and a special teams coordinator for the rest of the season is going to fix these problems or be any better, leave the franchise any better than it started? Unless you're going to put Bill Belichick in tomorrow, which you can't because you have to go through the whole hiring process, then let's just, you get through the rest of the season and then you start anew. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Like, some of these teams with the Jets, okay, it was a dumb decision, but do you want to get a look at Jeff Ulbrich? Fine. Yeah, get a look at Jeff Ulbrich, see if he can fix it. But, there's no one on this staff in Jacksonville who's going to fix it, right? So I don't understand the rationale there necessarily.
Yeah, I think maybe sometimes these things have run their course, and the one thing I would wonder is whether or not it's smart to do it just so you can do your vetting for the next coach out in the open, and you could start a general manager search now if you wanted to, which, if Trent Baalke is not part of this, and I've heard the same rumblings that everybody else has that he could survive this, God help that franchise, because if you look at his record, if you look at Trent's record over the last, I think it's 6 seasons as a general manager, he's 30-64. He's made the playoffs once. He drove Harbaugh away in San Francisco, replaced him with Jim Tom Sula, which might be one of the worst hires in my 20 years covering the league. That was one and done. Chip Kelly was one and done after that. And then, somehow survives, he survived the 2 firings, the Harbaugh firing and the Tom Sula firing in San Francisco. And then in Jacksonville, he was like a top lieutenant for Dave Caldwell, survived the Caldwell-Doug Marrone firing, then sort of somehow survived the Urban Meyer year. At some point, this has got to point back to him. And I just, again, I would lose a lot of faith in the Cons if Trent Baalke somehow survives this and Doug Peterson doesn't.
Yeah. So moving on, there's not much more to say. I mean, the Lions, that was an ass kicking, and good for them. They were better prepared. So in terms of games of consequence here, we have a couple more from the slate, and then two more from the slate, and then we'll hit the lightning round. Seahawks 49ers is just interesting to me because it shows that, San Francisco is not quite there. This is a team, Nick Bosa looks banged up, was in and out of this game. So I don't know where you necessarily go from here, but it just shows this division's a gridlock, baby. I mean, the Rams won. We'll get to that in a second. They beat the Patriots. This division's going to come down to the bitter end. And while it might not be the best division, it might be the most fun division over the last few weeks of the season.
Yeah. And I think the fact that, Bosa is this seems like wear and tear stuff, where I think it was one oblique, now it's the other or something like that. Is that right? Something like that, where he's dealing with multiple things now, and he's beat up, and they've obviously had to lean on him. Then is McCaffrey going to be able to make it through the year? There's that question. Ayuk is out for the year. I still think that the Niners have that other gear. Whether or not they can find it, I mean, time's running short on that. You know what I mean? So can they find that gear that they have the last few years? I think after this, it's an open question, especially with how they played on offense. I again think Geno Smith is one of the most underrated players in the NFL. He did a great job leading the team down the field at the end of that game, and I think he's been able to help them maximize what they have offensively. They've had offensive line issues. They got through that. And I think it's a great credit to Mike Macdonald. What a weird week they had there, right? With Tyrell Dodson cut. He's a starting linebacker for them. And then Conor Williams, their starting center, retiring. What a strange, bizarre week in Seattle. And I think it's a good sign for where Mike Macdonald is bringing that program, that they were able to withstand that and play the way they did on Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, how do you see this division playing out? Because, at what point should we say that
the Cardinals are the best team?
Well, I think so. I love the Cardinals. But at what point do we say that San Francisco kind of needs to break this thing down, or not break it down, but just get healthy? I mean, at what point, because some of these teams.
But I think we've seen flashes from both them and
sure.
I mean, we saw flashes from the Rams. Flashes are really good too. When they have both Puka and Cooper Kupp out there, we'll get to them in a second. They're a young defensive front. I mean, what a great job they've done being prepared for the loss of Aaron Donald, right? With Jared Verse, who I think is hands down the defensive rookie of the year, with Braden Fisk and Byron Young and Kobe Turner. I just think based on where the Rams are along the lines of scrimmage, especially getting Steve Avila and Jonah Jackson back, they're dangerous too. So this is the division, Connor. I have no idea who's going to win that division.
Yeah. It's kind of fun though, right? I don't know. Yeah. And big opportunity for Mike Macdonald here. I mean, this is, listen, this is why they went out and got him, right? To hold the 49ers to 17 points, to hold Christian McCaffrey under 100 rushing yards, to make Brock Purdy look, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 159 yards. You're going to get beat by Juwan Jennings. Okay. You want to beat me with Juwan Jennings? Fine. Taking away those teams' best players. I mean, Ricky Pearsall was straight zeros on 2 targets. This is a good Seahawks defense. If they can get the run game going, which again is still kind of stagnant at this point. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba, 10 catches, 110 yards. Let's go. Let's go out there and win this dang division. I don't know. That's kind of fun.
Yeah. I mean, they have the Seahawks have a sneaky amount of really good young players too, between Charles Cross and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Kenneth Walker and Devin Witherspoon. I think there's a real future like with that group. Like maybe they're not there yet, but I think they've got a good core of players, and a lot of those guys play premium positions. Like I think that they're going to be in good shape, both down the stretch this year and coming out of this year.
All right, so we're going to lightning round the rest of this. Just give me one quick thought on all these games, Albert. Broncos 38, Falcons 6.
Bo Nix, baby. Bo Nix.
28 of 33, 307, and 4 tutties. My goodness. Michael Penix was in this game briefly just because it was an absolute blowout. I think
time down the sideline, too, that Robinson dropped there.
Yeah. I think the Falcons have been kind of skating that fine line of like, hey, we're a good enough team to beat the clunkers, but got exposed in a big way in this one.
And the NFC South is wide open again.
With Tampa Bay having most of their tomato cans yet to come on the schedule and getting healthier. So just saying, something to look out for. But Denver Broncos have the last playoff seed in the AFC right now. I mean,
yep.
That's incredible. Good for them.
And credit to Sean Payton for going with his gut and taking Bo Nix where he took him and developing him the way he's developed him. And I think the job that Vance Joseph's done is probably one of the more underrated coaching jobs in all of the NFL. Like to be able to create this sort of havoc-wreaking defense they have without having your Micah Parsons type of pass rusher, your Myles Garrett, like they've been able to generate a pass rush with numbers. They play very sound. I mean, they probably have one elite player on that defense, and that's it in Surtain, right? And so, like all the way around, the Broncos actually look like a pretty well-rounded team, which I don't think if we were looking at that roster before the year we would have thought.
Colts 28, Jets 27. I texted some of my friends during this game that there was a moment where the Jets went up 7 and Aaron Rodgers throws his second touchdown and he's going over to the sidelines and he's going, let's go for two. He is waved off and they send the kicking unit out. And the second that happened, I texted my friends and I said, there is no way this game does not end with that 2-point conversion not being statistically significant and Rodgers getting to go out and act like, not smugly about it, but right. And he didn't, I don't think, really, to his credit, whatever. But this team is, they've given up. And I think the thing that bothers me the most is, Sauce Gardner earlier in the week said, oh, well, Jeff Ulbrich did a tackling thing and we don't need that because we know how to tackle. Well, show it. Like someone needs to step up, and outside of like the defensive line is the only thing that's playing. It's the only unit that's playing reasonably well right now.
I mean, and I think the players were right to question the firing of Saleh. And I have these numbers up here where, I mean, honestly, like it sort of proves the point. Now, what the players thought was looking at it, they didn't feel like firing Robert Saleh really did anything. Because it's not like Saleh had lost the team. And Saleh and the strength of the team at that point, and I think you'd argue maybe isn't anymore, was the defense, right? So you're removing the architect of the defense, and then you're spreading a really good coordinator in Jeff Ulbrich thin. So through their first 5 games with Saleh as the head coach, they were allowing 17 points and 255 yards per game. Since over 6 games, they're allowing 26.2 points per game and 346 yards per game. So almost 10 points, almost 100 yards more per game since firing Robert Saleh. That is a lot of egg on Woody Johnson's face for doing what he did. And it's amazing how everything's blown up in their face. But I guess in retrospect, sort of predictable.
Owners are gonna own, and that's how that goes. Browns Saints Rizball, another victory.
Riz
2-0, and let me just so the Saints win 35-14 over the Browns. Tell me this isn't the greatest statistical stat line in NFL history.
Oh, here we go.
Taysom Hill, 1 of 2 passing for 18 yards and an interception. Quarterback rating 41.7. 7 carries for 138 yards and 3 touchdowns, a long of 75. 8 receptions for out of a team leading 10 targets for 50 yards. Taysom Hill, Albert, is a 34-year-old former BYU quarterback, punt protector, tight end, quarterback, fullback, running back. It's incredible.
It's so great, too, because I think we all sort of have it in our head that he's still this young prospect, but he's 34.
He's our age.
Well, not my age.
Can you imagine waking up this morning and, after that game? But I love every minute of this.
I cannot remember a player like him. Unique is a word that gets thrown around too much. I think he's unique. I don't think there's another. I was racking my brain yesterday. Is there another one like him?
Well, what Darren Rizzi after the game was, he was talking to the players about Red Grange, and even Taysom Hill didn't know who Red Grange is. But that's the only.
It's you, buddy. It's you.
That's it.
You're Red Grange.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and the Saints are back in it now. They're only 2 games back of the Falcons.
Please let this happen. We've seen what happen. We've seen what happens when you have to promote the interim. Antonio Pierce is not doing great in Vegas. We'll get to that game in a second. But, man, just give me 1 season of Rizzi. Put him on a year contract.
So you want to know what's interesting? I talked to Derek Carr after the game, and he said to me that he sees a lot of similarities between how things are going right now at Darren Rizzi and how things went in Vegas in 21 Rich Bisaccia.
Oh, let's go. Come on. Give us just a little bit of Riz ball, Yep.
And Clint Kubiak, how about Clint Kubiak's big comeback here? He had the big, the first 2 weeks was unbelievable. Things flattened out after that. And now Clint Kubiak coming back around with his creative use of Taysom Hill with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed down. Pretty impressive.
Rams 28, Patriots 22.
By the way, before we really quick, Chase Young also had one of my favorite plays of all time in that game. Did you see that?
I have not seen the Chase Young play yet.
So Chase Young was late onto the field. He comes jogging onto the field. And just jogging onto the field as the quarterback is calling signals. And then I can't remember what sort of play it was on offense, but just moseys onto the field and then just runs and makes the tackle. I'll send it to you. Hold on. I'm gonna send it to you.
Okay, I got it here. Here he goes. Yeah, no sense of urgency whatsoever. And then
just jogs onto the field and makes the play.
That's funny. We should just we should do that more
Imagine
often.
being that talented where you could jog onto the field in an NFL game and make and wind up making the tackle.
Come on, Jameis, snap that ball and make him pay for it. All right. Rams and Patriots. New England hung around in this one. Great game from Drake May. You can excuse the pick, I think, at the end. That's young man stuff.
Yeah.
But a great pick by Cameron Kinchins there. And but okay, Los Angeles is now 5-5. You're right in the mix for the division here, and they've been inconsistent. Last week was a huge letdown for them, but at this point, you just kind of need to be near the rim in the NFC West. So there you go.
Patriots look like they have a real one. I will say that. And this is something that's been pretty consistent. I think what Drake's done's very impressive because of what they're putting around him right now. Playing behind a deficient offensive line without great receivers. They've got good tight ends and backs, but I think Drake's deserves a ton of credit for the way he's playing. And I the Rams, like I said, I think because of their defensive front and because their offensive line's getting Avila and Jackson back, and because maybe you're getting Kupp and Puka a little healthier, there's a ceiling there. This is a team that could make noise if it gets into the playoffs, not just get there, but make some noise when they get there. So I really like where the Rams are at.
I remember last year talking to some people out there and them saying, if we make the playoffs, like we're not just making the playoffs, we're winning this thing. And maybe they get that same level of confidence down the stretch. Dolphins 34, Raiders 19. Fun game, I guess, if you like to watch Jonnu Smith.
And Brock Bowers, big tight end.
And Brock Bowers, yeah. All 19 of the Raiders' former head coaches that were in the offensive coordinator room got a nice day from Brock Bowers. 13 catches, 126 yards, and a touchdown. The best day for a rookie tight end, I think, in NFL history, if I read that right in terms of catches and yards. So good for, I mean, that's one thing that you can say. Las Vegas's rushing stats in this one. Jacoby Myers led the team with 1 rush for 20 yards. Alexander Mattison had 5 for 19, and Zamir White 5 for 9. Gardner Minshew 2 touchdowns and interception, but a bounce back game for Tua, 3 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill looked good. Even though it was 7 for 61, I thought he was free in the defensive backfield more than he has been in recent past. So my
overarching thought on this on this one is like how you can continue to see like how specifically that offense is built for Tua, because it looks like they play at a totally different speed when Tua's in there. So much of what they do, and this is to Mike McDaniel's credit, and also I think was to their detriment early in the year, is they've tailor-made that offense so specifically to what Tua does well that it's really hard for anybody else to run it. So again, like that's a great credit to Mike McDaniel for building something that works for his quarterback, but it also can be tricky when you lose that player. So I don't know, man. Like what are they? Were they 4-7 now? Right?
I think. 4-6. 4-6.
4-6. So they're not out of it. They're not completely out of it. I'm not saying they're going to catch the Bills or anything like that in the AFC East, but they're not out of it.
Yeah, I mean, could they stumble back in? Yeah, I mean, they haven't categorically played well in the colder months, but maybe now this is where the pendulum shifts and we get little frozen Dolphins, which would be very fun. Last and last, we have the Vikings 23, the Titans 13. I mean,
did you have second thought? Were you going there and then had second thoughts on your way there?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't planning on saying last and last, but it is. It's I mean,
it is the last game we're talking about. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, the Titans suck. And whatever. Nick, we had a 98-yard Will Levis touchdown that made this a little bit less of a laugher. And, I don't know. I mean, the good game from Sam Darnold where everyone was kind of on his back a little bit and posts a 100+ QB rating. Justin Jefferson gets 6 of 8 targets. I think we're kind of just back on track here.
This is like a survive in advance game for the Vikings.
Just don't get anybody hurt,
Right. And so like next week, like they've got a chance to sort of assert themselves against the Bears. And then, like, what shapes up is a pretty big game against the Cardinals after that. Like, you look at the Vikings schedule, like, could they get to 12 wins? Maybe, I mean, they're 8-2 right now.
Man. Isn't that wild?
Yeah. I mean, this was, again, like, I think it's like such a huge credit to so many people there, too, because you could argue, all due respect to Justin Jefferson, who's the best player they've had in a long time there, but I mean, you could argue the 2 most important players of the last decade were Kirk Cousins and Daniil Hunter, and they lost both of them in the same offseason, Yeah. And so to come back like this is, again, really, really impressive.
I
don't know if I want to get too much in the weeds of the game. They play good enough to win.
Not a great look for the Conor Predict All 272. Had the Vikings at 7-10. Finishing right behind the Bears,
really
at 9-8. So Gilberto, who's doing the Thursday show, he picked them to win 3 games. So whatever.
The Vikings?
Yeah, he's got to deal with that.
So they're like his version of the Buccaneers then.
Yeah. Everything else was good, though. I had the Steelers almost winning the division, so whatever. I'm happy with this one. But anyway, thank you guys for sticking around. Fun show, good show, hangout. Some say the best show of all time. And thank you for always being there with us on Monday morning, Tuesday, whenever you listen. Stay tuned for Matt and Gilberto later in the week. And yeah, let's go. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there.